What we're going to do here is demonstrate how to prepare a container tree, or a tree in a pot, for planting. Unfortunately, the fact that they're grown in a pot creates two problems, big problems for their root systems. The first problem is, as we'll see when we take it out of the pot and take a look at it, the roots grow out 360 degrees from the trunk, but they soon hit the inside of the container, and they can no longer move out directly as they would in nature, as all of these trees have grown. And they have to go up or down or around, and typically what they do is they circle. So when we get this out of the pot, we're going to see that it's going to be a tangled mass of roots with lots of them circling round and around. The second problem is, quite often this portion of the tree, the lower portion of the tree, becomes buried in this material, this potting medium, because every time they're moved from a smaller to a larger container as they grow, more and more material is thrown in on top, and it tends to get buried here. And you don't want that section buried when you plant it. And there's a particular feature there called the root collar, which is the point where the trunk ends and the roots begin, that we have to be able to see, because that's the indicator, the feature that tells us how to plant the tree vertically in the hole compared to grade. So those are the two problems, circling roots and a buried root collar. So with that said, first thing to do is to take it out of the pot. And one thing I'll mention is, you might think, well, we'll just grab it and lift it out. First and foremost, you never want to try to lift it or move it by the trunk, because that can break your roots. You always want to be lifting it by the edges or by the bottom. So the first thing we usually do is just press on it a little bit. Roll it a little while we're pressing on it, maybe tap on it a bit, and I'm looking at the root system while I'm doing this, or rather the branches, to make sure I'm not damaging them. Let me see if we'll get it out. If not, we'll go to the next step. Not quite ready to come yet. Alrighty. There we go. All right. So here you can see that the roots have grown out to the edge, hit the edge, and started to circle. So before we get started on freeing up these roots, let me show you some of the tools that you'll probably find to be convenient for this purpose. A screwdriver or something else like that is always good for trying to loosen some of these up. You may have to prune some roots, so it's good to have a pruning shears. You can use a tool like this to try and loosen up some of the potting medium to remove it. We want to get as much of this potting medium off as we can, because we don't want it in the hole. What potting medium is it's not soil, it's mulch. And it's little bits of ground up bark. And if that goes into the hole, it's going to decay, and as it decays, it absorbs oxygen, which means it's competing with the roots that want the same oxygen that's in the hole. So we don't want to have this stuff in the hole. We're simply going to collect it here, and we'll put it on top of the hole once we have it planted. Let's see, and then we have a hammer and chisel, which on rare occasions we'll need if we find that there is a root which has grown around actually the base of the trunk and grown into it, in which case we'll have to chip it off. Hopefully we won't have to do that. This is a typical situation you'll find on the bottom, and this is going to go nowhere. A lot of times what people will do is they'll take a saw and they'll just cut the whole bottom inch off. All of this will go. We've revealed a couple of roots here which have some deformities. You'll see this one comes up and just takes a right angle. It's never going to straighten out. Also, it's broken here, and it wasn't anything I did. It's an old break. So we're just going to prune that off right at just above where that angle is. And if we found other roots like that with a right angle, we'd cut them off, because they'll never straighten out. So we could go with this right now and plant it. The only glitch is right here. We may have some root problems here, and I can't tell because the soil is frozen. So we're going to stop for a moment. We're going to put a little water on it and see if we can defrost these and get a look at what's under here. You can see that we found we had to use some a hose because the top part of the root ball was frozen, and there wasn't any way we were manually going to be able to deal with it. The water temperature of the water in the hose is warmer than the ice, so we were able to use it to help us to see what's going on here. Now it is okay to pick it up by the trunk because there's no weight on the root ball anymore. This whole tree now weighs about 10 pounds, whereas before it weighed about 50 or 60. You can see kind of the finished product here. It ended up that we had to use a hose to water down the root ball because the top portion of the root ball had frozen. That potting medium in there was frozen. We couldn't get it out manually without putting some water on it, the water temperature being warmer than the frozen material. And it cleaned up very well, and you can see it has a very beautiful, dense, full root system. When it comes time to plant, our job as we're backfilling will be to hold these outward so that they're growing out and not all down. Gravity is now pulling them all downward. We'll be holding them up and putting soil underneath them and on top of them to hold them in place. And you'll see that when we do the planting video. But let me mention another important issue here, and that is the root structure is one of the problems with container trees. The second problem we mentioned was burying this section called the root collar. Here's your root collar right here, right in this area here. You can see the trunk is stopping. You see the color changes actually from this deeper green, I hope it is, to this lighter color. That's the root collar right there. Trunk stops, roots start. That's the feature you're going to use as a basis for your measurements for how deep your hole should be. And why that's important is that that's where we're going to take our measurement to decide how deep our hole is going to be. So the top part of our measurement would be right here at the root collar, and then we would come down to the bottom of the roots, but it'll be the bottom of the roots with them flared out, as they will be when we plant. And in this case it's, what do you say, 15 inches. So we would not want to dig our hole deeper than 15 inches deep. So that's another kind of lesson, is it's ideal to bare root your tree, to go through the process we've just gone through before you dig your hole. Now that's not always possible, but certainly if you're digging your holes first, a good idea is to not dig them much deeper than about 12 to 14 inches, because it's easier to take those last couple inches out than it is to have to backfill the hole and compact the soil to create a new higher bottom. And in the end, you're actually going to end up planting it a little bit higher than 15 inches because all the soil you've taken out of the hole is loose. And over time, in the couple of months after you plant it, it's going to settle and the tree is going to drop. So we deliberately plant the tree 2, sometimes maybe even 3 inches higher than grade level. We perch it up here a little bit because it's going to sink. Anyhow, this was all about how we prepare a container tree's roots for planting.